Welcome to the Outdoor Man podcast with me, Dan. This week, the podcast is done with the Norfolk Ornithologist Association. I decided to speak to them because during my school work experience, I went there, and to be honest, I learned so much about how, at that point I knew I wanted to be a gamekeeper, and I didn't realise until going there how much the countryside's entwined with each other, and how much the keeping fits into the conservation, especially for the preservation of wild birds. So I contacted Sophie, who's the head warden there, and she remembered me, thank God, because she was the assistant warden when I was there for my 2 weeks. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. How big's the reserve?
This reserve?
Yeah.
Oh, this is only about 10 acres.
Yeah,
it's quite small, but it was very specifically selected because, well, when the bird observatory was first actually established, it was established at the Firs, which is now the Norfolk Wildlife Trust Visitor Centre. But this area, was chosen for a bird observatory because it's right on the corner of that change in direction around the wash.
I remember being told that, now you've said this. I remember when I came for work experience, I remember being told that.
Yeah.
Because you're on the point here, aren't you?
So exactly. So we're sort of sticking out into the North Sea, but it's also a point where birds are being forced to make a decision. If they're migrating and they're following the coastline, it drops away in a direction they're not expecting. And it does make them either stop or turn back quite a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So first of all, it's kind of like an oasis. There's a lot of shelter in the pine trees here, particularly when the wind's in the north. And north winds bring us our autumn migrants.
Yeah. You've got the good bank behind us, haven't you, the sea wall as it was, which makes a big difference, that.
Yeah.
I can't believe, that how much of a sun trap it is actually.
This is
burnt to death.
It's not a very easy environment to work in the afternoons. If the sun's blazing in the window and I'm at my desk, it's sort of melting. I can't really concentrate too much on the. That's why I said come in the afternoon. Then I've not got to sit at my computer, you see.
Oh yeah, ulterior motives.
But yeah, not only is the belt of pines that offers shelter, but we've got a lot of vegetation that grows on the reserve, which is it's really good for insects, or it produces a lot of fruit. Elders are good for insects, and then you've got the berries in the autumn time, and we catch a lot of warblers that are eating that, and then they produce drop-ins which are sort of a bit like ink.
Yeah.
Leave your skin all blue and purple.
Ugh.
But yeah, we've got several drinking pools and things like that. So it's just a place where birds can shelter. They can feed up. They can get out the weather. And it does draw birds in. And it's got a lot of suitable cover where we can actually put our mist nets to catch the birds and ring them.
Yeah.
As well.
Have you been catching much?
It is quite a quiet time of year, so there's obviously birds that come to the reserve to breed. We have a lot of warblers like reed and sedge warblers, lesser whitethroats, blackcaps that are coming here to actually nest. And if they've had a good breeding season, then often by now they will be on a second brood, and I think that's probably where a lot of our birds are at the moment. We have been catching quite a lot of young dunnocks, the speciality of the observatory, the dunnock. Yeah. But also, we're seeing some young blackcaps and whitethroats and reed and sedge warblers and things like that, and they have got time to breed again as long as the weather's decent. And then as we get into August, we tend to get post-nest dispersal, so we get quite substantial numbers of young birds, which are either birds that have fledged locally or they're actually beginning to pass through on their return migrations back to Africa. And that tends to sort of peak in September, and then in October we start getting birds that are coming back from Scandinavia who've been breeding there in the summer, and they're then returning to Western and Central Europe. We've been catching things like song thrushes, blackbirds, you know, green finches, chaffinches. If we're lucky, we get bramblings in certain years as well. There's really very wide range of species that we can get, particularly September and October, which are our busiest 2 months of the year, and that's when we tend to focus most of the ringing effort. So,
yeah, I remember seeing in the book, you know, some real random birds when I was here.
yeah. Oh, there's been a lot of very unusual birds recorded here over the years, because if you get the right weather conditions,
All the wrong weather conditions for that matter.
well, it's wrong for them.
Yeah.
That's the thing. When we tend to be happy to see rare birds, but they're probably not having a great time. If they've ended up here and they shouldn't be, then that doesn't mean that they can't correct for their error when they've had a chance to stop and rest and refuel. But you do get birds staying here for a variable length of time in order to do that. And the other thing about the site is that you have so many different habitats in such close proximity. So, you know, we do monitor the seabirds.
Yeah.
We do a lot of sea watching, and we do standardised recording of the seabirds that are passing. And you tend to get particularly a lot of interest from bird watchers in the autumn when the winds are in the northwest. That's, people expect to get some of the more interesting seabirds during those conditions, things like skewers and shearwaters and things. And
you've still got the hide at the back here.
Yes,
at the back.
yeah, we have. I mean, unfortunately, all our hides with doors are not currently accessible to
No,
the
I saw
public.
that. I'd worked it out roughly about halfway down the path. Thought we can get in that one.
Well, you
can't
can
get
go
in
in
that
the ones that you can just walk in and out of, and we've left all the flaps open, and we've limited it to one household at a time at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think it's a problem that all the reserves are going to have, is how they're going to open up to the public with their hides.
Yeah.
Some
A
have
man
already,
stood outside each hide saying, right, you can go in, right, you come out.
well, some have already done that where they've got bigger hides. You know, one option is to leave all the hide flaps open, leave the doors open, so no one's having to touch anything. But if you're at a site that you can't monitor 24 hours a day, then you know you need that to be a fairly enclosed site.
Yeah.
Whereas we are next to the coastal footpath, and actually to leave everything open is actually going to cause more people to come through who may not use the hand gel. It is odd that some people don't seem to take it seriously or think
or
that
grasp it.
No, I think that's right. They don't. But you know, I've heard one or two people say, "Well, I'm bound to get it. I don't care if I get it." And I'm thinking, right. So you don't know anyone who's got a health condition. You don't know anyone who's over 70, or anyone who knows anyone who is. You know, it's not.
Yeah, it's not about
just
you. It's about everybody
exactly.
else.
It's not just about you. It's about everybody. And you know, I think that started off. You know, I think people were very.
Did you shut down completely, or did you just shut the hides up when it first happened?
What we did, before the actual lockdown itself began, we'd already had to close hides.
Yeah.
And we roped off across the end of this seating area so that people weren't coming into the seating area at all.
Yeah.
And obviously they couldn't access the building, but they could still walk through and bird watch from, you know, the best spots and so on. Where, I mean, a lot of the birding here is not particularly hide orientated.
No, you can see a lot of the paths, can't you? I thought that as I was coming along.
And we've got a few sort of benches, and particularly this viewing platform, which gives quite a lot of extra height, and it does really help the view. And you can see quite a wide area where you can get quite a lot of birds. So we did that, and then we closed entirely when the NWT closed their reserve. And I mean, it was obvious that was necessary.
Yeah.
You know, all ticketing venues were closed.
Yeah.
And that for you know, for our visitors, that's what they are. I do monitor some of the private land in the area to produce information for the landowners about their wildlife, because they are interested in it, and I think it's important to have evidence of what they are achieving. We've got this is all sort of higher level stewardship, and a lot of that is private. There's a farm immediately behind me which is not in any agri-environment schemes, but it's still terrific.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to have a record for that in case they ever do want to bring in any schemes or anything. Who knows what it's going to be like in another couple of years.
I remember, and I haven't been down there. I remember my granddad went down there just before he finished driving, I reckon. At Flitcham, there was a private bird reserve down there. It had been made privately for the farmer's own use, but it was public.
Was that Abbey Farm?
Abbey Farm, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the wildlife down there was fabulous. That's right beside, you know, all around it's heavily keepered.
Yeah.
You can't
Well,
tell me
this
that doesn't play a part in it.
This has all been part of the same story, because Edward Cross invited the NOA to ring at Abbey Farm.
Right, yeah.
This was when I'd not long been warden, and you know, I really wanted to have a sort of, what's the word I want? A more objective approach. I wanted the opportunity to do some more objective work at, you know, sites where there's shooting, sites where there's private land, because I think people have a very fixed attitude to what is actually involved, and there's actually a lot of really great wildlife which is going unrecognised. I went through several hoops to try and get ringing going at Flitcham, which is not immediately near here. You know,
you've got to go out your way to get there.
It would have involved quite a lot of work. I mean, we've always done outsites ringing, but in the end, that was 2013, which was a particularly bad year for the greys anyway.
Yeah.
And the keepers didn't want to know. And of course, you know, because it was me,
Yeah.
I don't suppose that I immediately look like the best person to have on an estate who's going to be the most open-minded about the laughing traps and all the rest of it.
I think it's the whole, that comes down to the whole one you know, the blinkered, oh yeah,
but it can't
she's a
help
bird
it.
watcher, so
but
she
it
can't
can't help but work both ways.
Oh no.
And you know, I completely understand that, and I felt very sad about it, but I wasn't angry with anybody. I knew why they'd said no, and I knew what idea they'd have in their mind of what that was going to be like. And I had a conversation with Ed where he said, well, we have shoots on a Saturday, would you be able to come and do the ringing on a Sunday? And I said, well, I was planning to start in February when the shooting's finished. And he said, oh, that's very understanding of you. And I just thought, oh God, have we got to be like this, you know?
I've had very similar with the hunting.
Yeah.
So like, we hunt from, what was it, end of August, beginning of September, right through till March.
Mm.
If it wasn't for certain masters of the hounds who's got a lot of land, we wouldn't get nowhere, because the keepers are like, oh, no, can't come in here, shooting.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
Fuck off, we don't do no harm.
But that's as old as the hills as well.
Yeah, and East Anglia is terrible for it.
Yeah.
Like, if you go down any other packs, but especially down south to the right a little bit, where they've got an abundance of foxes, they put extra pheasants down, crack on, because they just can't cope with it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, I don't know. East Anglia seems. Who was it said to me? I'll keep a friend of mine said, oh yeah, you know what they're like. If they've got one magpie on the land, they're gonna have a bad season. And that sums up gamekeepers in East Anglia terribly. You know, they hunt the magpie, and it pains me. It really pains me. And I think since I've sort of grown up, I think the more it aggravates me now, because I've seen the whole picture, especially like when I was here doing my work experience, you know, trying to catch the stoat, which I never caught,
No.
and the whole Larson cage debacle.
Yes.
You know.
Do you know, I went straight after I had that conversation with you, I went to the back shed and there was one of those bloody springs sitting there.
And it was being done for the right reasons.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, times have changed massively.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I think, yeah, I mean, since I've been warden, I've had to do a bit of rat shooting.
yeah.
And then one winter we had a problem here with squirrels. And we had, I think, about 3 drays. And we always get a few apples from the orchard to put down in the Heligoland trap. And they'd been going into the Heligoland trap for the apples. So I let them run out. And then I got a live catch trap and I concealed it with the last apple or 2 in it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't setting it fine enough quite a few times, and then eventually I got one, but I knew that I needed to get it in the live catch trap and then shoot it. It's not pretty, but it's legal.
Yeah.
And I got rid of 3 squirrels, and then they've not been back since. So that's about 7 years. It's been largely squirrel free. I've not had to do anything about it, but that's the only pest control that I've had to do.
Yeah.
Except for sorting the rats out. And we've got
Yeah.
one site where we have to poison and one site where it's better to shoot them.
Yeah. See, nobody ever hears that side of the story and the reasons why. You know,
No.
because the rats take the eggs. Not they're disease-ridden bastards, but nobody ever seems to see that. There was a lady in, where was she? In London, I think she was, and she got rats coming to a bird feed. She's feeding them. She thought it was great until someone said, you know, the wheels disease and oh, they're all right, ooh, and all this, and then not that long after that conversation, she caught Wills disease.
Oh no.
And
But that's terrible. That's very serious, isn't it?
rats had to go then, would you believe?
Yeah. Well, I've had the experience of we've got a bunker up at Wolsey Hills, and we've always put bird food down at Wolsey Hills, and we had an old boy there called Tom Fletcher who used to take care of it for years. He took care of it, and he got poorly one winter and wasn't going there anymore, and we went and cleared the bunker out, and the rats had been nesting in there for some considerable time.
Lovely.
It was absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
And that is why you don't let that problem get so out of control. It's so dangerous and unhygienic and unpleasant, you know.
I remember that at home, when they first really started using hoppers for the game, the rats just, it was quoted in The Sun, I think, as the McDonald's for rats. Right, and actually, to be honest, I would agree to that. We were going out with a 250 cartridges and shooting about 3 rabbits at night, and the rest were rats, and just outrageous. And I remember saying, and Dad saying as well, actually, what the partridges and the pheasants are supposed to do.
Yeah.
He said, if you've got a hop up, you know, so far up a hedgerow, and all them rats in between, how are you supposed to keep your eggs and your chicks?
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of hard work is what it costs in the end,
Yes.
and a lot of bloody poison.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very difficult. And one of the things that's interested me, I did rodenticide course for gamekeepers
Yeah.
at Holcombe in 2016, which was very odd. I don't know if you've ever seen a cat egret in a field full of British cows, but the cat egret's perfectly happy, and the cows
Aren't.
don't understand what the hell this white bird is that's running around their feet, and they're running away from it, you know. And it was like, my assistant came with me because he was working at the 2 sites where we needed to do rat control, and we sort of sat down, and it was like, you know, and then
Awkward silences.
it was just, they were all sticking together, and they were scared of us. You know, it was incredibly sad. As the day went on, I got talking to one guy who was there, and he was looking after the grain stores at Creek or something, and he was just worried about passing the test, you know, and he just wanted someone friendly to sit with, so he came and sat with us. And then at the end for the final session, we actually sat outside on the benches. And there was one old boy who got nowhere to sit, and he you know, barely plucked up courage. And I was like, no, come and sit down, you know.
Yeah, we don't bite unless you ask us to.
Well, but I wouldn't have gone there if I was going to object to what they were teaching or what it was for. But it's just, I mean, I can understand why people find it odd.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just one of those things that you have to try and get past. And that's really what I've been interested in doing. And I think because there is a lot of misconception, and it is a subject which is quite misused, I was particularly interested in gathering evidence, because other people are not interested in doing that. They wouldn't think of it.
People just like to stay in their own way, slag the other system off, and be done with it.
Well, but they're encouraged to see it that way.
Yes. Oh, 100%.
And you know, if you read, I mean, I've found GWCT to be good at getting across the idea that it's work on farmland with conservation has got to be collaborative. And you know, if you're going to sit down at a table with somebody, and the first thing you're going to say to them is, right, I don't really give a shit about your livelihood and I don't really understand what you do. How far can you expect to get? Why do people think that it's not got better?
Yeah.
You know, and I've spent some time as well looking at how far back a lot of these attitudes actually originate,
Yeah.
which is, you know, they're very, very old attitudes.
From the day of time.
Norman conquest, certainly.
Yeah.
You know,
Their own
For
empire, and they won't let anything go.
well, for as long as people have been told that it doesn't matter if they're starving, they can't have someone else's, you know, food for hunting.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that's quite a fundamental.
Yeah.
But you know that it personally, I think the idea of standing someone in a skeleton costume, their child in a skeleton costume, and standing them on a grouse moor, because that's the most offensive thing you can find in this world,
Yeah.
is truly shocking, because it is based in a complete lack of understanding. We all know what they're objecting to, but it seems to be the one profession where you can assume that someone is a criminal without any evidence. And that's fine. It wouldn't be okay if they were black.
No.
Or, you know.
No, things would soon change then, wouldn't it? I'm going to say the Grace Moors, you know, I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
I used to love going up on the Grace and going beating. But I just don't know what's going to happen. It's a shame. What hasn't helped is the big commercial shooting of that, I think, that's the key. I think that's going to have to stop. And that'll upset a lot of people.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you define what's wrong with it? I mean, well, I'll show you what's in that report.
Yeah.
But you know, as I say, it's not something that I can bring into the conversation today.
No, that's fine.
It's more. I mean, what's influenced me has been working with Jed. You know, he was poaching since he was, I don't know, able to run around, and he always saw it from both sides. You were here when I'd only been here a couple of months, and it was always just a natural part of what was going on. You know, predator control can have real value in conservation, and we need people who are properly qualified to do it humanely. I think that's the thing that makes me so sad, is people don't appreciate that it's actually skilled work that they're going to need.
Yeah.
You know, okay, so
I was listening to an American podcast that had an English lady on. I can't remember her name now. I have messaged her to see if she'd speak to me, but she hasn't got back to me because I'm a nobody. But she was saying about it was about trophy hunting.
yeah.
Well, whenever I think of trophy hunting, I always think of lions and tigers and that side of things. But actually, in the UK, obviously got the stags and whatnot, and that there's a chance that all might change, and the impact that it'll have on economy will be horrendous. And then and she also said, okay, so you want us? She was talking about antis and stuff like that. She said, all right, so you want us to stop shooting deer? Fine, we stop shooting deer today. Okay, what happens when there's too many deer and they're destroying all the crops and they're overrun? And the person said, oh, we'll just relocate them. We can relocate, and that's fine for the first year. What happens once you've relocated so many, they can't go nowhere else?
No.
And they didn't have an answer for it. And I
No.
think there we go.
But I think there isn't an answer that is palatable for most people, and I understand what is upsetting about the idea of controlling numbers of wild animals.
At least the stag, the meat goes back into the system.
Yeah.
Mostly.
But I mean, I was reading, I don't know, it might be as much as 5 years ago, but I was reading that they reckon we'd need to cull 60% of the deer population in this country just to stabilise it.
Yeah.
You know, it is already a major problem. It's a major problem in conservation because they graze so much understore, and you know, we wonder why we don't have any nightingales anymore. Well, they want hawthorns that are touching the floor.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that with all the amount of deer that are around. And here on this site, we have to put fences around anything that we want to grow.
Yeah, otherwise you have
Because
the muntjac
because
and
they're
that
going to
in.
be they're just everything's, you know, we've been trying to get elder re-established in the central part of that, you know, probably since you were here, and we've finally got an area that's been fenced off. It's been so dry we had to keep watering it.
Yeah.
But you know, if we've got muntjac here, and
Who
you know
hasn't?
it's not really well exactly. But I mean, I got contacted by a member of the parish council earlier this year who'd got a pair that were coming into his garden and making a mess of his garden, and you know, he wanted to know what he could do about that.
The bluebells, they're really bad for the bluebells. That's thinking about having the New Forest. I think I read somewhere that they were having a big cull because of, obviously New Forest has got boar as well, hasn't it? I think. Not sure. I could be talking shit, but I know the muntjac for definite. And they were saying they had big cull because of the worried about the muntjac eating all the bulbs, you know, of the bluebells.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to draw a line. You know, those have been artificially introduced, and we're putting them into, you know, they've moved into environments where there's already a lot of other pressures. And actually, if we want to protect what's left of our wildlife, the idea that we just don't touch it is, well, it's quickly going to show what is wrong with that strategy.
I always remember someone saying to me, if you ever see 3 individual muntjac in one wood block, you're sort of infested, overrun. And I was beating, and just mind my own business, tap my stick, well, you know, as you do. I wasn't very old, so mind my own business sort of thing, thinking about tractors or something. And also this muntjac comes towards me, comes bowling past me. I thought, oh, muntjac. Carried on. Literally about a minute later, another muntjac comes by. I thought, hang up. And then literally, again, at the same time span, another one comes. 3 individual muntjac came past me on the same ride, and I thought, yeah, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And, you know, I must have been, what? I wasn't riding my moped by then, so I'd have been, it's probably 14.
Yeah.
And consciously thinking then, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the answer's going to be, but we can't stop.
Well, I think there's there's a real problem, isn't there? There's a real problem of perception. You know, the fact is that most of us have to go back 5 generations now to find anyone who worked on the land.
Yeah.
And you know, as we've got more and more separated from the natural environment, and more people live away from the countryside and sort of regard it as a, you know, a leisure facility, they're now going to turn round and tell the people that are still working in the countryside that the state of it is their fault.
Yeah.
And so not only are they fighting a losing battle, but you know, they're expected to take responsibility for a situation which everyone has a part in. And you know, I think it's just a very sad state of affairs, really. But the answers have got to be through working together, and I think that the divisions that have been exploited certainly in my time working in conservation, I find very worrying. I don't see how we can actually sort of find a way forward if we're not working together.
It'll all crash and burn, I think. It's a big circle. Like I said on the phone when I first approached you, I said it's a cake. You know, each person's got that chunk of cake to make the whole one, and I still see it like that now. And without everyone being together, I think it'll just crash and burn.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably more, if I was using an analogy, it'd be making of a cake, I suppose, really. You know, if you miss an ingredient, it doesn't work, does it? And that's certainly how I feel about it anyway. Who's rustling up there? Can you hear somebody rustling?
Oh, well, we've got ongoing pigeon nest building activities.
I reckon that's what that is then.
Yeah, well, no, they started making one up there, and I think they noticed me sort of watching them.
So they're hiding.
So I think they've moved a bit further up that one, and then there's another one up in that
There's
one.
There's definitely somebody making a nest in that one. I can hear him.
Yeah.
Go on, her, go on, Tane.
Well, we had a lovely nest up here, which is actually quite well constructed for a pigeon.
Yeah.
Because the downsloping branch, the the female bird was sort of sitting on there, and the weather got very windy in the autumn, and so she started bringing more sticks and building the back of it up, so she was actually sitting level.
Yeah.
And there were all these gales, and she was bouncing up and down. She sat tight. She got 2 broods off that nest in sort of one in late July and one again in sort of early September.
Really?
Mm.
Tell you what I did, and I actually thought of you when I was doing it, because I'd love you guys to come over with your nets. My boss has just taken a bit of orchard on opposite his house.
Yeah.
It was to he took it on to preserve his privacy.
Yeah.
But this part, actually the whole orchard, he got about an acre of it, but the whole orchard was like them bramble bushes over there.
Mm.
And he, oh, can you clear it out? I'm like, oh, that's sacrilege, that. I was thinking about driving it for pheasants before anything else. And no, I want it clear, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to. Anyway, I started going up and down the roads with the tractor and squishing my brambles out. Then I had to get them off. Then I had to get the brambles off the apple trees themselves.
Mm.
And these apple trees are fantastic apple trees, just covered in bloody brambles. Anyway, the nests I found, so I've got to go back later in the year because it's just, I found first thrush nest I've ever seen. I found that this year.
Yeah.
Just before I went off doing the COVID testing, and I was a bit gutted actually because I'd pulled a load of brambles off before I saw the nest.
Yeah.
And saw I'd like to, and she did get the chicks off, but I didn't think she was going to, because there's a lot of sparrowhawk damage on the lawn. I've once seen a sparrowhawk there, but seen the aftermath, but never seen the sparrowhawk itself. But I saw it actually for the first time last Friday. And there's a lot of magpies and bits and pieces, and I thought, you're never going to get them chicks off that nest. But she did do, which I was mightily surprised about. But yeah, and there's a lot of nests, and I've got a bird load of brambles, but now I can't touch that because it's middle of the summer and there'll be nests in there. So
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to bloody wait. But I'm not that I'm complaining, because I saw enough of that place when I was cleaning it out, to be honest. Like, snarled up with brambles when I was on the tractor, and because it was an open cab tractor. But what I've tell you one thing I want to see, and I haven't seen, and I'm going to see one this year, swallow-tailed butterfly.
Oh wow. Yeah. I've never seen one of them.
Have you not?
No. No, I've never really done the Broads.
That is the one thing I want to see. I was just looking at the butterflies going across here now.
Yeah.
You're a bit too far around for them here, I suppose.
Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, they're quite a specialist. Yeah. No,
I think there was some seen not far from home on some of that wild bird mix and that cover they put down. I think it had quite. I don't know whereabouts it was, but I feel sure someone said they'd seen one. But I mean, a rarity. But that was because they'd put something. There was something specific in either in the stewardship or in the game mix itself.
Yeah.
But have you ever done? And it's, I couldn't get into it. The insect reading for the partridges. So where you go, Game Conservancy do it. So you get a big net, walk along the cover crop, swishing it about like you're weird. And I suppose anybody who does that job has got to be a little bit weird. Like, a bit like
Well, I do know quite a few people who do that sort of.
How weird are they? Be honest.
They're pretty okay actually.
You lied to me. You lied. They're all weird. And I remember Dad doing it before we went into the dogs, and they're having some good results off the top of the cover, you know, to count, you know, to make sure they've got the right insects.
Well, we certainly get people that do it on the reserve.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to see what sort of insect results that you get out of some of the cover here, because there's a few sort of areas of wild bird mixes and game mixes.
Do you plant the wild bird mix, or has it just been?
Oh no, I mean this isn't on our land.
Not on yours. Oh, not on yours.
No, no. So, but some of the areas that I am monitoring have got game and wild bird mixes on them, and I mean just over there, Drove Orchards, we normally have a sort of a public wildlife day there once a year. And we do like guided walks around it, and we usually run a couple of moth traps. And last year, one of the moth traps I ran quite close to the wild bird mix that they got over there, and I caught that many cabbage moths. You know, because I mean they've obviously got a lot of brassicas that are in that, and my goodness, I'd never seen. Occasionally you get a moth trap that's full of one particular species, but I've never seen so many cabbages. And I thought, I'm not sure if I should be telling them about this. They want all their bloody cabbages eaten or not. But it was quite amazing to see the number that had actually been pulled into that particular trap. And I got another one that was further up in the reed bed. There weren't really many in it.
Really?
So it did seem quite specific. Well, moths are supposed to be pulled into a moth trap. They can be attracted from quite a long way away, but most of them are supposed to be from like really quite immediate.
Right, okay, so
Habitats.
on the spot type thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean that could suggest that that's actually moths that were in that
Area.
habitat that had gone to that particular trap. But you do get a lot of moths that, you know, just to throw you, they'll migrate.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, just to really throw a spanner in the works.
Yeah, well, and cabbages particularly, things like cabbages and turnip is the one I'm thinking of. That can often be a migrant. But you also have like a resident population as well.
Oh, yeah. Didn't know that about moths, they migrated. That was a new one.
Well, some do and some don't. So, I mean, I've been catching this week a species called the tree lichen beauty, which only turned up about, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago, and it was like this is only the second or third for Norfolk or whatever,
Yeah.
and I've caught 3
Does
so
it-
far this week.
Does weather change when they migrate as it was? Because like was it last year there was a snowy owl somewhere, wasn't there? That was like mentally where it shouldn't be, and that was the winds that pushed it right.
We had snowy
it
owl
over.
here, 2018, March 2018.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking
that
of.
was during the Beast from the East.
Yes, that would have been it.
And it was here. Now it turned up.
So, did I read Siberia?
That's the sort of area where it ought to be.
Yeah.
And it turned up sort of just it parked itself halfway between the beach off Titchwell and Thornham Point here, but we could just see it
Yeah.
with a telescope right off the top of the bank there, and then it went round to Snettisham, and it was there where people could get rather a better view of it, Snettisham, and I saw some.
Station seems to get quite a few rare things because I remember.
Well, it's a huge area, and it is very unusual because it's facing west into the wash on the west facing east coast, if you like. That does make it quite unusual. But the extent of those mud flats, and then you've got the sort of, you know, the actual reserve and the pools and everything as well. Yeah. It's a huge draw, and birds that are on migration are going to see that from the air and see that that's a habitat that they can use, and they'll drop in.
They had a marsh different harrier there, didn't they, a few years ago? A good few years ago, about 10 years ago, I reckon.
There's been some odd ones around.
Yes, I remember that being at Snettisham. Dad saying that Dad had seen it when they were shooting. Dad had seen it when they were down on their marshy bit at Sandringham there. He'd seen it.
Yeah. Well, there was
all that, and he said to me originally, he rang me up and said, I don't know what's going on. He said, can you ring your granddad, find out what's going on, because there's loads of bloody bird watchers about.
Yeah.
And then Dad actually did see it in the end.
Well, we had a northern harrier here one winter, which is the North American subspecies of hen, and we've had. I know around Snettisham there was a black-eared kite,
Right.
which was quite exciting for people. So that was a variety of
Do they
black kite.
still look like a kite?
Yeah. Yeah. And
as it were, with a tail.
There's been an odd sort of pallid harrier in the winter time.
I saw a
here as
harrier
well.
yesterday, and that's the first one I've seen for a long time. Where was I driving to? Can't remember where I was driving now. And I thought, that's a harrier. That's a harrier, sort of thing.
It's surprising though this time of year. They will hunt over farmland.
Well, I remember the combine drivers years ago, when I must have still been at school, finding nests in the field from having to go round them.
Yeah, you'd mark them and then you'd harvest around the outside.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that can happen is, depending on what crop you've got, if it rains, then that can collapse in on the nest.
Yeah.
And get the nest wet, so you have to.
Put it all off, yeah. Especially if you get a late crop off, I suppose, when it starts to flop over. I don't think we're going to have trouble with that this year. Though it's like actually the harvest started later this year than it did last year. I remember driving back from France last year. It was all all the combines going, and actually when we got back to the UK, the combines were working in the UK as well, which
Well,
was early.
it's been an appalling farming year, hasn't it?
Oh, horrendous.
I mean, there's a lot of fields around here that are still half bald, and some that haven't been sown at all.
Yeah.
You know, it's really not been good.
That'll do the wildlife good, Dave.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on what birds you're talking about. I think that some of the farmland birds this summer have done well because we had so much fine weather, particularly in April and May, and so far there seem to be quite a lot of yellowhammers.
Yep.
I think they might have had quite a good breeding season and stuff like that, but you know, whether they really want bald areas of unsown fields, I'm not sure.
Again, I'd like to say a big thank you to Sophie and the NOA for letting me go and talk to them and talk about the amazing things they're doing, especially with the gamekeepers and everything else. It was a fabulous honour to go and chat and talk rubbish for a few hours. It was brilliant. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the show. Goodbye.